Well, that's nice and warm.
It's the best part of the day right there.
About 2,000 degrees in there?
The metal is about 2,150 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
The furnace lining can get up to 3,000, which is part of what helps us reflect that energy back into the metal. So, crucible's made out of silicon carbide. There's 300 pounds of aluminum, nickel, bronze in that crucible.
Wow.
So what they're going to do now is remove the slag from the metal, which is a process of oxidation. All of the alloys, as you melt them, will have fire scale impurities built up on the outside from the oxidation in the melt process, or contaminants that were in it from prior castings. So as he's doing now is taking and removing that from the surface prior to pouring.
How long will the metal remain in a state that's good for pouring while it's in that crucible?
Well, we try to time our pour, so we're going to use every bit of metal in it before it cools down to the point that the last casting is no good. That's also part of the process control that'll come in after the castings are done, which is inspecting to make sure that they were poured at a proper temperature to make sure no cold shuts or voids were left on the parts themselves. This is what makes us a little more unique than some of the bigger production foundries. We're able to change alloys quite frequently. So if we were backed up with another row of, say, silicon bronze or manganese bronze to pour, we would pour it immediately after, or start melting it as soon as this pot was removed, which allows us to change alloys very rapidly and give parts in a lot that we know this particular alloy, as we talked earlier about strengths and the makeup of the material. We know when these castings are done that the castings are all coming from the same lot and batch of material.
Right.
Get a good run, you can see the metal has gone in the sprue and come up the vents at the end, and it came up a good long ways, and then we now have good flow all the way through the parts, up and out the vents.
And typically, how long will it take for these parts to cool enough to where you're going to break them out of the sand?
This particular alloy, we're going to wait anywhere from 35 minutes to 2 hours, and they would be fine to pull them out. Bigger, and that's really due to the size. If they were bigger castings, then they may stay in 24 hours or longer.
Oh, that's really neat. Look at this. So I can see the molten metal down into that riser there.
Yeah. And you can see as we're moving along now, they're starting to shrink. This one here, you can actually see the sequence of the shrinking happening. It's just slowly drinking. Yeah. And by the time they're completely cool, there will be a void in the center of that riser.
Very cool. Neat. Patterns go together to become a turnbuckle.
So essentially, the body pattern, again, we talked about earlier, with the cores in it, then were threaded and bored in the lathes, so each side has a left and a right-handed thread bored into the casting. The shanks, or threaded portion of the turnbuckles, are cold-rolled rods, so we know that those are going to be as high a strength as possible to also match with the alloy that we're using. There's a finished head casting, or jaw end. Again, they're cast slightly longer. One is we cast a sacrificial portion on this barrel so that we can actually grab it in the machine and keep it nice and true to its shape before it's bored and threaded. And then as it comes off, it's trimmed back and this excess material gets back into the process. Then here's also one of the toggle patterns that we showed in the earlier part of it. The pattern is showing where the gate was going in and the vertical core prints. And again, all of these are split patterns and done with shrink rates as well as the engineering to know the strength and what we need to get out of them. But eventually the toggle will fit onto the end and connect to your chain plates.
Wonderful.
Well, then we can go over to the machine shop and we'll take a look at a couple of the others. And
Gas come in to get machined, threaded, you name it, to turn it into something useful.
And of course, we're rocking out, getting things done
That's
as
a good
everybody
thing.
should be.
That's exactly what happens.
So Donald's in the process of doing the 7/8 bodies as well as finishing up. Here's a 3/4 turnbuckle, and along with it is one that will be the 5/8. So the two bob stay turnbuckles, along with one of the whiskers stay turnbuckles, and eventually the standing rig, all coming together in parts and pieces. So as we go along, there's again, more jaw ends threaded, ready to go back onto the grinding machine to get their finally fit, but they've been fit checked and ready to go for their threading. And eventually adding in all of the rest, we've, as this process goes along, made both fixtures and mandrels left and right to support the ends or support any of the bodies as we want to machine grind them to finish them out so the finish is done. Lots of various different aspects and things we go through to get there.
Well, it's a beautiful thing. Well, this gets back to tradition again, which is it's handcrafted, right?
There's no substitute for craftsmanship.
Yep, exactly.
No. And this is where the artistic vision becomes a mathematical reality.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well,
Well, thank you.
the rig will stay up.
For the next 100+ years.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
that's good. Well, Donald, nice job.
Thank you.
Beautiful work.
I do my best.
With what we have to work with.
Well, you guys do a
Thank
great job.
You're welcome.
And that's what I try to get across. Is we always try to do the best job with the tools we have. Because
Well,
it's not about having the best tools. It's about the operator doing the best he can with the tools he has to work with.
yes, yes.
And then getting the best tools.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, thank you very much,
Cool.
guys. That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
glad you could come. Well,
Buckles, the old steel turnbuckles or iron that Martha had on for God knows how long, that the bronze are replacing, and you can see how worn and they're bent, and things are getting pretty bad here, and that's why we're making new buckles.